Hi, I'm Ashley, 27 years old, and I never thought I'd be telling the story of how my own sister Stephanie kicked me out of her wedding party. After years of living in her shadow, I finally had something she didn't know about. I owned the gorgeous venue she fell in love with for her perfect day. When she told me I wasn't welcome at her wedding anymore, I had a decision to make that would change our relationship forever. Before I get into this family drama, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to deal with Bridezilla family members. Trust me, this story has more twists than my sister's wedding cake design. Growing up with Stephanie was always complicated, though only 2 years apart. The dynamic between us was established early. She was the star, and I was the supporting character. Stephanie, now 29, was the social butterfly who could charm everyone from the grocery store cashier to our strict fourth-grade teacher. She had this effortless way of walking into a room and immediately becoming the center of attention with her vibrant laugh and animated storytelling. Meanwhile, I was the practical one. Quieter and more analytical, often found with my nose in a book or working on budget spreadsheets even as a teenager. Our parents, Jason and Karen, unintentionally reinforced this dynamic. Dad built a successful career in real estate development, working long hours while Mom stayed home with us before eventually becoming an event planner when we were in middle school. They weren't bad parents by any means, but looking back, the disparity in how they treated us was obvious. When Stephanie wanted dance lessons, they found the money. When I asked for investment books, they suggested the library. Stephanie's artwork was framed and displayed prominently in our home, while my academic achievements were acknowledged with a quick "good job" before the conversation returned to Stephanie's latest adventure. The most glaring difference came when we reached college age. Stephanie was awarded a full ride from our parents, tuition, apartment, car, and spending money to pursue an arts degree. She bounced between majors, eventually settling on graphic design, which she now does freelance work in between her social media influencer aspirations. "We want you to focus on your education, not work," they told her. When my turn came 2 years later, the family finances had mysteriously tightened. "We think you'll appreciate your education more if you have some skin in the game," Dad explained as he handed me loan applications. So I worked 30 hours a week at a real estate office while maintaining a full course load in business administration. Those years were exhausting, but they taught me more than any classroom could. I learned the real estate business from the ground up, developed relationships with investors, and started recognizing opportunities in the market. By my junior year, I had saved enough to make a tiny investment in a foreclosed property with 2 other agents who took me under their wing. We flipped it for a modest profit, which I immediately reinvested. By graduation, I had small stakes in 3 properties and a burning ambition to build something of my own. Stephanie never really understood what I did. At family gatherings, when relatives would ask about my business, she'd wave her hand dismissively. "Ashley does something boring with houses," she'd say. "Not everyone can have a creative career like mine." What no one in our extended family knew, what only our parents were aware of, was that my boring work with houses had led to my proudest achievement: purchasing Willow Creek Manor 3 years ago. The manor was a historic estate built in the 1920s that had fallen into disrepair. The elderly owner wanted to sell to someone who would restore it rather than demolish it for new development. I'd shown her my portfolio of restoration projects and shared my vision of transforming it into a premier wedding and event venue. Something about my passion must have resonated because she accepted my offer despite higher bids from developers. The renovation nearly broke me, financially and emotionally. There were moments, standing in the rain under a partially collapsed roof, when I questioned everything. But 18 months later, Willow Creek Manor opened its doors as the most sought-after wedding venue in our region, with a 2-year waiting list and features in several bridal magazines. I kept my ownership quiet for several reasons. Partly business strategy. I hired a management team to run daily operations while I continued growing my real estate portfolio. Partly personal. I'd grown tired of Stephanie diminishing my achievements. And partly self-preservation. I wanted something that was just mine. not subject to family dynamics or Stephanie's competitive nature. My parents knew, of course. They'd helped with some of the landscaping decisions and attended the soft opening. Dad seemed genuinely proud, though he never quite apologized for the disparity in how they'd supported us. Mom was thrilled to have an in at such a prestigious venue for her event planning clients. "This is quite an achievement," Ashley, Dad had said at the opening, "but maybe don't make a big deal about it to Stephanie. You know how she gets when she feels overshadowed." Even in my moment of success, protecting Stephanie's feelings came first. I agreed because it was easier than arguing, never imagining how dramatically this secret would impact our lives in the future. Last Thanksgiving, Stephanie arrived at our parents' house practically vibrating with excitement, a gleaming diamond on her left hand. Her boyfriend Michael had proposed during their weekend getaway to Napa Valley. Michael came from old money. His family owned a chain of luxury hotels, and the princess-cut 3-carat diamond proved it. "We're thinking June wedding, which doesn't give us much time," Stephanie announced over turkey and stuffing. "Ashley, I want you to be my maid of honor." I nearly choked on my cranberry sauce. Despite our complicated relationship, I felt genuinely touched. Maybe this was a turning point for us. "I'd be honored," I said, meaning it. For the next few weeks, I threw myself into maid of honor duties. We created Pinterest boards, compared color palettes, and stayed up late drinking wine while debating the merits of band versus DJ. It was the closest I'd felt to my sister since childhood, and I cherished these moments of connection. The first crack in our newfound harmony appeared when venue hunting began. Stephanie had extravagant visions that didn't align with most venues' reality, or their availability for a wedding only 6 months away. Everything good is booked years in advance. She complained after the 5th rejection. "How am I supposed to have a perfect wedding when all the decent places are taken?" Mom glanced at me over her coffee cup during one planning session at their house. "What about Willow Creek Manor? I heard it's gorgeous." My stomach tightened. "It's pretty booked up too," I said carefully. "But surely they have cancellations sometimes," Mom pressed. "Maybe we could at least tour it." Stephanie's eyes lit up as she searched for images on her phone. "Oh my God. This place is stunning. How have I never heard of it?" "Ashley, can you call them? Maybe they'll have something if we're flexible with the date." The responsible thing would have been to confess my ownership right then. Instead, I heard myself saying, "I know someone who works there. I can arrange a tour." A week later, I met Stephanie, Michael, and our parents at Willow Creek Manor. I had arrived early and briefed my venue manager, Grace, to treat me like any other client's sister. We had a good relationship. And though she seemed confused, she played along without question. Walking through my own property pretending to be a first-time visitor was surreal. I watched Stephanie's face as she took in the grand staircase, the crystal chandeliers I'd hunted down at estate sales, the gardens I'd spent countless weekends perfecting. "This is it," she whispered, squeezing Michael's hand. "This is exactly what I dreamed of." Grace professionally discussed dates, mentioning the usual 2-year waiting list. Before checking the system and discovering a rare June cancellation, a date I had personally held open after their engagement, just in case. "It must be meant to be," Mom said, squeezing Stephanie's shoulders. Michael discussed the pricing with Grace, wincing slightly at the numbers. I had instructed Grace to quote our standard rate, planning to waive the fee entirely as my gift to Stephanie. "We'll need to think about it," Michael said diplomatically. "It's at the very top of our budget." "We're booking it," Stephanie declared. "Daddy will help if we need it." Dad looked uncomfortable but nodded. I made a mental note to have Grace send a contract with a significant family discount that would make everyone happy while keeping my secret intact. After securing the venue, Stephanie assembled her bridal party. Besides me as maid of honor, she chose her college friends, Natalie, a pharmaceutical sales rep with a trust fund, Brooke, a boutique owner whose parents financed the business, and Taylor, a part-time yoga instructor married to a surgeon. All came from privileged backgrounds and had never worked a day job like I had. Our first bridal party lunch was at an upscale restaurant where the others ordered champagne at noon without checking the prices. "So Ashley," Natalie said after our second round, Stephanie says you're in real estate? That must be so interesting, showing houses and stuff. I smiled tightly. I actually own an investment company. We purchase, rehabilitate, and manage commercial and residential properties. Oh, Taylor said with polite disinterest. So, you have a business card and everything? Stephanie quickly changed the subject to bridesmaid dresses, but not before I caught her eye roll. Later, as we browsed a bridal boutique, the conversation turned to our own attire. I'm thinking Carolina Herrera for me, Stephanie said, flipping through a catalog. And for you girls, maybe Vera Wang? I discreetly checked the price tag on a displayed Vera Wang bridesmaid dress, $800 before alterations. That might be a bit high for a dress we'll wear once, I ventured carefully. There are some beautiful options at lower price points that would look just as elegant. Brooke snickered. If $800 is stretching your budget, maybe we should look at David's bridal? The others laughed, and Stephanie joined in after a moment's hesitation. Don't worry about it, she told me later. I know things are tight for you. Maybe Daddy can help with your dress too. The comment stung, especially since I'd been planning to pay for her entire venue without recognition. But I swallowed my pride and nodded, not wanting to disrupt the fragile peace between us during what should be her happy time. I was beginning to realize that being kicked back into my supporting role wasn't going to be as easy as it had been when we were kids. As winter turned to spring, the wedding plans expanded along with Stephanie's expectations. What had started as an elegant but reasonably sized celebration morphed into an extravaganza with horse-drawn carriages, imported flowers, and a guest list that grew by the week. Each change required hours of my time, calling vendors, revising seating charts, adjusting timelines. Meanwhile, I was juggling major renovations on a new property acquisition across town and trying to keep my other businesses running smoothly. I need you to be more available, Stephanie complained during a particularly hectic week when I'd missed 2 calls from her florist. This is my wedding, Ashley. It's the most important day of my life. I'm trying, I assured her. But I have work responsibilities too. Can't you just, delegate or something? It's not like you're running Microsoft. These little digs were becoming more frequent as the wedding date approached. Each time I shared an idea or suggestion, Stephanie would consult with her bridesmaids, who almost always steered her in a different direction. The bridesmaid dress shopping expedition turned into a full-blown disaster. After I'd expressed concern about the Vera Wang prices, Stephanie had seemingly found a compromise, a mid-price designer with beautiful options around $400. But when we arrived at the boutique, she'd already pre-selected $800 dresses with the salesperson. Surprise, she announced. I decided we deserved the best after all. When I pulled her aside to discuss the price again, she sighed dramatically. Why do you always have to make things difficult? The other girls are fine with it. The other girls have different financial situations, I reminded her gently. Natalie, overhearing, joined our huddle. If money's that tight for you, Ashley, maybe you should reconsider your career choices. My cousin's real estate company is always hiring agents if you need a more stable income. Stephanie didn't defend me. Instead, she gave a small shrug that said everything about how she viewed my success, or perceived lack thereof. I ended up putting the dress on my credit card, swallowing both my pride and my anger. The $800 wasn't the issue. I could afford it easily. What hurt was Stephanie's dismissal of my concerns and her friend's condescension. The wedding shower a month later only heightened the tension. Hosted at Natalie's parents' waterfront home, it was a Pinterest-perfect affair with custom cocktails and a photographer documenting every moment. My gift to Stephanie was a handcrafted wooden wine box containing 3 bottles of wine to be opened on their 1st, 5th, and 10th anniversaries. I'd commissioned it from a local artisan who had incorporated elements of Willow Creek Manor's architecture into the design, a subtle nod to my real gift that was still a secret. As Stephanie unwrapped it, I saw a flicker of genuine appreciation in her eyes. But then Taylor leaned over. "That's so rustic," she said, in a tone that made it clear rustic wasn't a compliment. Stephanie's smile dimmed. "It's cute," she said. Quickly moving on to Brooke's gift, a crystal decanter set that cost more but carried far less thought. Later, while helping replenish the mimosa station, I overheard Stephanie in the kitchen with her friends. "I just don't know why Ashley's being so weird lately," she was saying. "She's like, questioning every decision and bringing down the vibe with all her budget talk." "Maybe she's jealous," Brooke suggested. "You're marrying into the Harris Hotel family while she's still trying to climb the property ladder." "She's always been competitive with me," Stephanie agreed. "But I thought she'd be happier for me, you know? This is my time." I stood frozen, mimosa pitcher in hand, as my sister continued. "Mom insisted I make her maid of honor." "Honestly, I was going to ask Natalie, but you know how family pressure goes." The pitcher nearly slipped from my hands. All these months, I'd thought we were reconnecting, that she genuinely wanted me by her side. Finding out I was an obligation rather than a choice was like having cold water thrown in my face. I confronted her that evening as we were leaving. "If you didn't want me as your maid of honor, you should have just been honest," I said, my voice tight with hurt. Stephanie's eyes widened. "Were you eavesdropping on me?" "I wasn't trying to. But I heard what you said. About Mom making you choose me." She sighed, not denying it. "Look, it's not a big deal. You're my sister, of course you're in the wedding. But you didn't want me to be. Can we not make this about you for once?" Stephanie snapped. "This is my wedding. My special time. Why do you always have to create drama?" I stood there, speechless. Somehow, my hurt feelings had been transformed into me being selfish and dramatic. It was a familiar pattern from our childhood, Stephanie rewriting the narrative to cast herself as the reasonable one and me as the problem. "You're right," I finally said, too exhausted to argue. "It's your wedding." "Thank you," she said, clearly missing my sarcasm. "Now can we please focus on the remaining details? We still need to finalize the menu tasting. And I'm thinking we should add a champagne fountain for the cocktail hour." The venue coordinator said it might be extra, but Daddy said not to worry about the budget. I nodded mechanically, thinking about how I'd specifically told Grace to accommodate any reasonable request without mentioning additional fees. The extra charges were fictional, just part of maintaining my cover as a non-owner. Stephanie would never know that I'd instructed the staff to give her anything she wanted, no matter the cost. As I drove home that night, I wondered how much longer I could keep up the charade, and whether it was even worth it anymore. The bachelorette weekend in Napa Valley should have been a chance to repair our fraying relationship. I'd spent weeks planning it, leveraging my business connections to arrange VIP tours at exclusive wineries that normally had year-long waiting lists. Though Stephanie had wanted Miami or Las Vegas. The private villa I'd rented was a hit, and the chauffeured tour of 3 boutique wineries left everyone pleasantly tipsy and in good spirits. Even Natalie seemed impressed, though she couldn't resist asking, "How did you manage to get reservations at Silvercrest Vineyards?" "My parents couldn't get in last year. I have a client who knows the owner," I explained simply, not mentioning that the client was actually my business partner in a small commercial development nearby. That evening, I'd arranged a special dinner at an elegant restaurant with a Michelin-starred chef. We were seated in a private room overlooking the vineyards, with a sunset that painted the sky in dramatic pinks and purples. "This is actually perfect," Stephanie admitted, taking artful photos for her Instagram. "You did good, sis." For a moment, it felt like we were reconnecting. Then Taylor noticed the car keys in my purse when I reached for my phone. "Is that a new Mercedes key? Did you upgrade?" I nodded, trying to keep it casual. "How much do real estate investors actually make?" Natalie asked, swirling her wine. "Because my cousin says the market is super volatile right now." "It depends on many factors," I answered vaguely. "But you must be doing well to afford a Mercedes," Taylor pressed. "What's your secret?" Before I could respond, Stephanie jumped in. "Ashley's always been secretive about money. Even when we were kids, she'd hide her birthday cash instead of spending it like a normal person." "Smart, though." Michael's sister Jennifer, the only non-college friend in the bridal party, commented. "That's how wealth is built." Stephanie rolled her eyes. "Or it's how you end up alone with a nice car and no one to share it with." The table went awkwardly quiet. "I'm just saying," Stephanie continued, the wine loosening her filter. There's more to life than working and saving. You have to actually live, you know. I forced a smile. Different priorities, I guess. Later, after multiple bottles of wine and elaborate desserts, the group decided to continue the party back at our villa. I begged off, claiming a headache, but promised to have breakfast waiting when they returned from their wine tour the next day. I was reading in bed when Stephanie burst into my room without knocking. "We need to talk," she said, her words slightly slurred. I set my book aside. "What's up?" She sat heavily on the edge of my bed. "Can we be real for a minute? You're embarrassing me this weekend." The statement was so unexpected that I laughed. "What? How?" "The way you're showing off. The fancy restaurant, the exclusive wineries, the new car. It's like you're trying to make this trip about you instead of me." I stared at her, genuinely confused. "I thought I was planning a special weekend for you." "See?" She threw up her hands. "That's exactly what I'm talking about. Acting like you're some big shot with all these connections. The girls are all wondering how you can afford all this, and it's making things weird. I'm not trying to show off, Steph. I worked hard to plan something nice for you. And now you're guilt-tripping me." She stood up, swaying slightly. "This is exactly why I didn't want you as maid of honor in the first place. Everything always has to be about Ashley and how hard she works and how responsible she is." Years of suppressed feelings suddenly rose to the surface. "Nothing has ever been about me. My whole life has been about staying in the background so you can shine." "Oh, please," she scoffed. "You've always been jealous of me. Admit it." "Jealous? Of what? Your endless stream of parental bailouts? The way you've never had to face a consequence in your life. See? You resent me." She pointed an accusatory finger. "You're supposed to be happy for me. But instead you're trying to outdo me during my own bachelorette weekend. That's ridiculous. I've done nothing but support you." "Well, I've made a decision," she said, straightening her posture in an attempt at dignity despite her intoxication. "You're not going to be my maid of honor anymore. Natalie understands me better anyway." The statement shouldn't have hurt after everything I'd overheard at the shower, but it still felt like a punch to the gut. "Fine," I said quietly. "If that's what you want." "It is." She moved toward the door, then turned back. "You can still be a bridesmaid, though. Family obligation and all that." After she left, I sat in stunned silence, trying to process what had just happened. Then I did something I'd never done before. I called up my airline app and changed my flight to the earliest available departure the next morning. I left a note for the group explaining a work emergency, ordered them breakfast delivery for the morning, and settled the bill for everything in advance. Then I packed my bags and left while they were still out enjoying the nightlife. On the flight home, I received a text message from Stephanie that made my blood run cold. "After talking with the girls, I think it's best you step down from the wedding party altogether. You clearly have issues with my relationship and my friends, and I don't need that negative energy on my special day." I turned off my phone without responding. When I got home, curiosity and masochism led me to check Natalie's Instagram, where I saw they were continuing the bachelorette festivities without missing a beat. In one video, I could hear Stephanie in the background. "It's actually better this way." She was bringing everyone down. Worse still, I discovered a group chat I'd been accidentally included in where they'd been mocking me for months. Screenshots showed Stephanie sharing my text suggestions for the wedding with crying laughing emojis and comments like, "Can you believe she thinks burlap table runners are still a thing?" One message from Stephanie particularly stood out. "The only good thing Ashley arranged was the venue. Have to give her credit for that one connection. Too bad her taste doesn't extend to anything else." My parents called that evening, their voices strained. "Stephanie says there was some kind of fight?" Mom began carefully. "Not really a fight," I replied. "She told me I'm no longer welcome in the wedding party. She mentioned you were showing off and making things uncomfortable," Dad said. Of course that's how she described it. I laughed bitterly. "Well, whatever happened, maybe you could apologize?" Mom suggested. "This is her special time, and family should come together to support her." "Did you ask her to apologize to me?" I already knew the answer. "Ashley," Dad sighed, "you know how Stephanie gets. Can't you just let her have her moment? The wedding will be over soon, and things can go back to normal." Normal. I repeated the word, suddenly seeing with perfect clarity what normal had always meant in our family. Stephanie's feelings prioritized, her behavior excused, while I was expected to accommodate and forgive endlessly. I need some time to think, I said finally. I'll talk to you later. After hanging up, I sat in my home office, staring at the framed photograph of Willow Creek Manor on my wall. Then I opened my desk drawer and pulled out the venue contract with my company name clearly listed as the owner. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider an option that had previously seemed unthinkable. For 3 days, I wrestled with what to do. I barely slept, alternating between righteous anger and crushing guilt. I called my best friend Jordan, who had witnessed the Stephanie dynamic our entire lives. She kicked you out of her wedding? Jordan was incredulous after hearing the full story. After everything you've done for her? I know, I sighed. And now I'm considering something terrible. The venue, Jordan guessed immediately. You're thinking about canceling it. Am I a horrible person for even considering it? Jordan was quiet for a moment. Remember in college when you skipped your final exam to drive 4 hours because Stephanie had a breakup and needed you? Or when you gave her half your security deposit when she couldn't pay her rent? Or how about when you stayed up all night helping her finish a design project after she procrastinated for weeks? That's different. This is her wedding. And that's exactly why this might be the wake-up call she needs. Ashley, this pattern will never end unless something changes. You'll be 80 years old, still rearranging your life to accommodate her latest crisis. Still conflicted, I called Grace, my venue manager, to discuss the situation hypothetically. If a client violated our personal conduct clause, what would our standard procedure be? I asked. We'd issue a formal warning first, Grace said. But if the behavior continued, we'd have grounds to cancel. It's paragraph 7 in the contract. Disrespectful or abusive treatment of staff or family members involved in the event. Has Stephanie been difficult with the staff? I asked, wondering if my sister's behavior extended beyond family. Grace hesitated. She's been demanding. Yesterday, she made one of our new coordinators cry over the shade of napkin folding. That evening, I sat with the contract in front of me, reading the conduct clause over and over. The ethical implications weighed heavily. Would canceling make me just as bad as Stephanie? Was I contemplating this out of pure revenge? But another part of me recognized that this wasn't just about revenge. It was about finally breaking a lifelong pattern and standing up for myself. If I let this go like every other slight and dismissal, nothing would ever change. After hours of deliberation, I made my decision. With shaking hands, I drafted a formal notice of cancellation, citing the conduct clause and specific incidents, including the documented dismissal from the wedding party after I'd arranged and paid for the bachelorette weekend. I scheduled the email to be sent to Stephanie, Michael, my parents, and the venue's official address the following morning. Then I took a sleeping pill and fell into the first uninterrupted sleep I'd had in days. The explosion came faster than I'd anticipated. At 9:07 a.m., Grace called me. Stephanie is here, she said, her voice tight with stress. She's not taking the news well. In the background, I could hear my sister's unmistakable wailing. I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said, already reaching for my car keys. When I arrived at Willow Creek Manor, Stephanie was sitting on the grand staircase, mascara streaking down her face, while Michael paced nearby on his phone. Grace gave me a sympathetic look as I entered. What is going on? Stephanie demanded when she saw me. Why would they cancel on us 3 weeks before the wedding? There's something you all need to know, I said quietly. Every eye in the foyer turned to me. I'm the one who canceled the venue. Stephanie stared at me uncomprehendingly. What are you talking about? I own Willow Creek Manor. It's my company, my property. And I canceled your booking this morning. The silence that followed was absolute. That's not possible. Stephanie finally said, You can't afford a place like this. Ashley has been quite successful with her investments, Dad interjected awkwardly. She purchased the property 3 years ago. You knew? Stephanie whirled on our parents. We've known since the beginning, Mom admitted. We thought it was best not to make me feel bad, Stephanie finished, her voice rising. Because poor Stephanie can't handle knowing her sister is successful? That's not fair, Dad protested weakly. None of this is fair. Stephanie screamed. My wedding is in 3 weeks. How could you do this to me, Ashley? What kind of monster are you? The kind who got tired of being treated like garbage, I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. You kicked me out of your wedding after I spent thousands of dollars and countless hours helping you. You and your friends have been mocking me behind my back for months. You've dismissed my career, my achievements, and my feelings our entire lives. So this is revenge? Ruining the biggest day of my life because your feelings got hurt. No, this is consequences. Maybe the first real ones you've ever faced. Michael, who had been observantly quiet, finally spoke. Is there any way to resolve this? We've sent out invitations. Everything is planned around this venue. I looked at my sister's tear-stained face, searching for any sign of genuine remorse rather than just anger at not getting her way. I never wanted it to come to this, I said honestly. All I've ever wanted was your respect. Real respect. Not just tolerance when it's convenient for you. This is ridiculous, Stephanie spat. You're seriously holding my wedding hostage for, what? An apology. Not just an apology. Acknowledgement of the pattern. Real change going forward. Oh, I acknowledge something all right, she said, grabbing her purse. I acknowledge that my sister is a vindictive, jealous person who can't stand to see me happy. Fix this, she pointed at our parents, or I swear I will never speak to any of you again. She stormed out, Natalie and Brooke trailing behind after shooting me venomous glares. Michael lingered awkwardly. I'm sorry it came to this, he said, sounding genuinely regretful. For what it's worth. I didn't know about how they treated you at the bachelorette party until afterward. After they left, my parents turned to me with identical expressions of dismay. How could you do this? Mom asked. You've ruined everything. No, I said firmly. I'm not taking that responsibility. Stephanie ruined things when she decided I wasn't even worthy of being a guest at her wedding after everything I've done for her. But canceling her venue? That's so extreme, Dad argued. You know what's extreme? The fact that you're both standing here blaming me instead of holding Stephanie accountable for once in her life. I left them standing in the foyer, feeling both terrible and strangely liberated. For the first time, I had refused to play my assigned role in the family drama, and, while the fallout was painful, there was also relief in finally being true to myself. 2 weeks of tense silence followed. My parents called daily, alternating between guilt trips and pleas to reconsider for the sake of family peace. Stephanie remained conspicuously silent, though I heard from Grace that she'd been calling the venue repeatedly, trying to convince the staff to honor the original booking. She offered to pay triple, Grace informed me. When that didn't work, she threatened to sue for breach of contract. The contract is ironclad, I assured her. And I've instructed the attorneys to handle any legal threats. Meanwhile, I threw myself into work, trying to ignore the gnawing feeling that perhaps I had gone too far. The satisfaction of finally standing up for myself was real, but so was the pain of family rupture. Several times I found myself reaching for the phone to call Stephanie, only to remember her parting words. On day 16 of the standoff, Michael appeared at my office unannounced. Can we talk? He asked, his usual confidence subdued. Over coffee in the small conference room, he spoke candidly. Stephanie is devastated, he began. We managed to find another venue. But it's not what she wanted. Nothing will be what she wanted. I'm sorry it affected you, I said sincerely. You were never the target of any of this. He nodded, then hesitated before pulling out his phone. There's something you should see. He showed me a screenshot of a text conversation between Stephanie and Natalie, dated the day after our confrontation at the manor. Natalie, did you get it sorted with the venue? Stephanie, working on it. Ashley's just being dramatic. She'll cave. Natalie, what if she doesn't? Stephanie, please. She always gives in. Besides, I'm still getting the venue for free either way. Why do you think I picked it? I stared at the screen, a cold feeling spreading through my chest. She knew? All along. Michael took back his phone, looking uncomfortable. Not at first. Your mother told her after you booked it. Something about being too excited to keep it secret. The betrayal cut deep. Not only had Stephanie known about my ownership, but she'd been counting on getting the venue for free while simultaneously excluding me from the celebration. I care about Stephanie, Michael continued, but this situation has made me see sides of her I can't ignore. The way she talks about you, the entitlement. He shook his head. I'm starting to wonder if we should be rushing into marriage at all. His admissions startled me. I never wanted to come between you. You didn't. You just forced me to see what was already there. He stood to leave. For what it's worth, I think you had every right to do what you did. I just hope someday you two can find a way forward. 2 days later. My parents orchestrated a family dinner aimed at reconciliation. They'd chosen neutral territory, a restaurant downtown, and promised both Stephanie and me that they were not taking sides. I arrived first, purposely selecting a table in the corner where we could speak privately. When Stephanie walked in, I was shocked by her appearance. My normally immaculate sister looked exhausted. Her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, her eyes rimmed with red. For a moment, sympathy overwhelmed my anger. Then I remembered the text message Michael had shown me, and I steeled myself. Our parents arrived last, taking their seats with the nervous energy of amateur hostage negotiators. We're so glad you both came, Mom began. Family is the most important thing. And we need to work through this together. Dad nodded earnestly. Life is too short for grudges. Stephanie had clearly prepared a speech. With mechanical precision, she said, I apologize for hurting your feelings. I was stressed about the wedding and said things I didn't mean. I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me and reinstate our venue booking. The words were right, but the delivery was hollow. A performance designed to tick the apology box without any genuine remorse or understanding. I appreciate you saying that. I replied carefully. But I need to know that you understand why your actions were hurtful. This isn't just about the wedding. It's about years of dismissing me and taking me for granted. Fine. Stephanie's facade cracked slightly. I haven't always been the perfect sister. But canceling my wedding venue? That's extreme, Ashley. It's cruel. You knew it was my venue, I said quietly. You knew, and you never said anything. You let me pretend all those months, and you were planning to use my property for free while excluding me from the event. She had the grace to look momentarily ashamed before rallying. Mom told me not to mention it. She said you wanted to surprise me with it as a gift. And you didn't think to discuss it with me directly? Even after kicking me out of your wedding. I was angry. People say things they don't mean when they're angry. Then maybe you're the problem. Stephanie, Dad cautioned, that's not helping. No, let's be honest for once, she continued, her voice rising. Ashley has always been jealous of me. Always competing, always trying to prove she's better. And now she's found the perfect way to ruin my happiness because she can't stand that I'm getting married before her. Is that really what you think? I asked, oddly calm in the face of her outburst. That this is about jealousy. What else could it be? You have this pathological need to prove yourself. With your fancy car and your secret business success. It's exhausting. Some of us just want to live our lives without turning everything into a competition. I am taking this seriously, I said. That's why I can't just pretend everything is fine. You kicked me out of your wedding, Stephanie. After years of supporting you, celebrating you, and yes, arranging a free venue for you, you decided I wasn't even worthy of being a guest. How am I supposed to just get over that? Because that's what family does, she cried. Family forgives. Forgiveness requires genuine remorse and a commitment to change. All I'm seeing is you desperate to get your venue back. This is pointless, Stephanie stood up abruptly. You've clearly made up your mind to punish me. Well, congratulations. You've succeeded. The wedding is postponed indefinitely. Michael is reconsidering things. My friends think I come from a family of psychopaths. Are you happy now? She stormed out without waiting for an answer, leaving an uncomfortable silence in her wake. I hope you're satisfied. Mom said, her disappointment evident. Your sister's heart is broken. So is mine, I replied simply. But I seem to be the only one who cares about that. I paid for the barely touched meals and left my parents sitting in stunned silence. The next morning, Michael called to inform me that he and Stephanie had decided to take a break. It's not just about the wedding, he assured me. This situation just brought some compatibility issues to the surface sooner rather than later. My parents were less understanding, blaming me entirely for the postponed wedding and Michael's doubts. But surprisingly, extended family members began reaching out with messages of support. About time someone stood up to Hurricane Stephanie, my cousin Rachel texted. We've all been walking on eggshells around her for years. Uncle Robert called to say, your grandfather would have been proud. He always said you had a backbone of steel under all that politeness. Even my mother's sister, Aunt Patricia, sent an email. For what it's worth. I think you did the right thing. Some lessons can only be learned the hard way. Stephanie, meanwhile, launched what could only be described as a social media campaign of victimhood. Vague posts about toxic family members and the pain of betrayal flooded her Instagram, along with carefully filtered, tearful selfies. I chose not to respond publicly, though the temptation to share screenshots of her texts about still getting the venue for free was nearly overwhelming. Instead, I focused on moving forward, both professionally and personally, and tried to accept that some relationships might never be fully healed. 6 months passed in a blur of work and personal growth. Willow Creek Manor continued to thrive, booked solid through the next 3 wedding seasons. I expanded my business, acquiring 2 additional properties and hiring a talented management team that gave me more time for myself, something I'd neglected for years while building my company. Michael and Stephanie's break became a permanent breakup. He sent me a brief but meaningful note. Thank you for inadvertently helping me see what I was getting into. I'll always be grateful. I heard through mutual connections that he'd moved to Chicago for a fresh start. My relationship with my parents remained strained but civil. Our conversations were superficial at first, carefully avoiding mention of Stephanie or the wedding debacle. Gradually, though, I noticed subtle shifts. Dad began asking more substantial questions about my business, showing genuine interest rather than polite acknowledgement. Mom stopped her passive-aggressive comments about my personal life and even recommended me to a friend looking for investment advice. Small steps, but significant ones. The first message from Stephanie came 3 months after our confrontation, a text that read simply, I still think what you did was wrong, but I miss having a sister. Not exactly an apology, but an opening nonetheless. I responded cautiously, suggesting we take things slowly. Our first meeting was a brief coffee, awkward and tense, but without the dramatic accusations of our last encounter. I'm seeing a therapist, she mentioned as we were leaving. She says I have issues with entitlement and emotional regulation. She rolled her eyes slightly, but there was a hint of self-awareness I'd never seen before. That sounds like a positive step, I said, careful not to sound condescending. Yeah, well, turns out having your wedding canceled and your fiancé leave you creates a lot of growth opportunities. She made air quotes around the therapy term, but her attempt at humor felt like progress. In a gesture that surprised even me, I decided to donate Willow Creek Manor for a day to host a charity wedding for a military couple who'd lost everything in a house fire. The event received local news coverage, and planning it gave me a new appreciation for the joy my venue brought to deserving couples. When the invitation list was being finalized, I hesitated only briefly before adding Stephanie's name. She came alone, dressed elegantly but subdued by her standards. I watched her from across the room during the ceremony, noting how she dabbed at her eyes when the couple exchanged their heartfelt vows. At the reception, she approached me at the bar. Beautiful ceremony, she said, accepting a glass of champagne. You've created something really special here, Ashley. Thank you, I replied, genuinely touched by the uncharacteristic compliment. I never said it before, but I've always been a little jealous of you, she admitted after a moment. You always seemed to know exactly what you wanted and how to get it. Nothing distracted you. The confession stunned me. I was jealous of you too, I confessed. Everything came so easily to you. Everyone always loved you instantly. She laughed softly. We're quite a pair, aren't we? Each envying what the other had. We found a quiet corner and talked more openly than we had in years. She spoke about her therapy revelations, how she was beginning to see patterns in her behavior that stemmed from our childhood. "Mom and Dad did us both a disservice," she said. "They put me on a pedestal and expected you to hold me up there. It wasn't fair to either of us." I nodded, having come to similar conclusions. "They meant well." They did. But meaning well doesn't prevent damage. She twisted her napkin nervously. "I'm sorry, Ashley. Really sorry. For the wedding, for the years before it, for everything. You deserved better from me." The apology I'd waited for all my life came so unexpectedly that for a moment I couldn't speak. When I did, my voice was thick with emotion. "Thank you. That means more than you know." We didn't magically become best friends that night. Real healing takes time, and decades of unhealthy patterns don't disappear with one conversation. But it was a beginning, a foundation we could build on if we both committed to the work involved. In the year that followed, we established a new kind of relationship. More honest, more equal. With boundaries I enforced and Stephanie learned to respect. We still disagreed, still occasionally fell into old habits, but we caught ourselves faster and recovered more gracefully. The journey taught me lessons I never expected to learn from a wedding venue cancellation. That standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. That enabling bad behavior hurts everyone involved, including the person being enabled. That some relationships can only heal after they break. That forgiveness doesn't require forgetting or pretending harm never occurred. And most importantly, that true family supports each other's successes rather than diminishing them. I still own Willow Creek Manor, though I've promoted Grace to managing director while I focus on new ventures. Stephanie has found her footing as a genuinely talented graphic designer, building a client base through hard work rather than charm alone. She's dating again, more carefully this time, more authentically herself. Last month, she asked if I would consider holding a date at the venue for sometime in the future, just in case. I told her I already had her birthday weekend next year. Not for a wedding, but for her 30th birthday celebration. Her eyes filled with tears when I showed her the reserved date in the system. "No pressure," I assured her. "The date is yours whatever happens." Sister's honor. Is our relationship perfect now? Far from it. We're still learning how to be sisters as adults, without the dysfunctional patterns of our childhood. Some days are easier than others. But we're both committed to the journey, and that makes all the difference. If there's one thing I hope you take from my story, it's the courage to value yourself enough to walk away from situations that diminish you, even when those situations involve people you love. Sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are the ones that ultimately save our most important relationships. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever had to stand up to family in a difficult situation, I'd love to hear about your experience in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this resonated with you. And share with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to prioritize their own well-being. Remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and others, is to break unhealthy patterns, even when it hurts. I'm sending you strength and courage for your own journey.